At General Motors, Chevrolet marked the beginning of the 90s by welcoming a new midsize sedan, Lumina replacing Celebrity. It was late to market. Chuck Jordan, GM design chief, later admitted that Lumina had been designed 7 years before its actual launch date, implying that the car had originally been scheduled to launch with Ford's 1986 Taurus. Though it was 4 years behind Taurus on aerodynamic styling and flush-mounted glass, Lumina had a few interesting ideas, like two-sided galvanized steel for all outer panels save for the roof, and four-wheel independent suspension, lubed for life with a transverse fiberglass leaf spring at the rear. 110 horsepower from the 2.5-liter inline-4 was more than any base engine in the Lumina's class, while V6 models managed 0 to 60 in a brisk 9.8 seconds, going on to an 18-second quarter-mile. With its four-wheel disc brakes, a V6 Lumina could stop from 60 miles an hour in just 127 feet. Celebrity had been, basically, an elongated compact car. Lumina, however, was Chevrolet's first true front-wheel drive midsizer, and this gave Chevy the opportunity to package Lumina properly, on a wheelbase 2.5 inches longer than Celebrity's and 1.5 inches longer than Taurus, making for more than 15.5 cubic feet of cargo space and a 17-gallon tank. In Lumina's first major long-term test, a Popular Mechanics survey dated April 1990, more than 70% of owners indicated that the car gave them no mechanical problems. Of the rest, 77% reported that the dealer was able to correct the problem on the first try. 96% found the workmanship good or excellent. Indeed, the only major complaints were that the seats were too firm and the glove box too small. But even though it had a coupe sister, the Ford did not, the Lumina could never quite compete with the Taurus. In engineering Taurus, the family car which set the bar for domestic and import competitors alike, Ford had the benefit of a luminary, Lou Veraldi, and the wisdom to set him free. Veraldi knew that a different sort family car, one which was aerodynamic and front-wheel drive, deserved a different way of doing things and created an organization to suit. By contrast, GM had not the organizational structure to attempt the revolution that was the GM 10W body, and Lumina seemed the half-hearted product of too many think tanks. It took just a glance at the horizontal 1970s-style dashboard, contrasted with the vertical driver-oriented European path that Taurus took, to complement its European styling, to realize that GM's entry was flawed. And instead of advertising the benefits of Lumina's rear disc brakes or independent rear suspension, Chevrolet focused on building a wholesome image around the car, making the Lumina lineup the official vehicles of the new Disney MGM Studios theme park in Florida. But the corner of the market to whom such a link would have appealed was driving Dodge Caravans, and thought the Lumina APV much too odd. Meanwhile, a rakish Z34 coupe, vaguely similar in its lines to the Honda Accord and a body style that Taurus did not offer, sold fewer than 2,000 copies between 1991 and 93. It was powered by America's first dual overhead cam V6. Remember, the Taurus SHO engine was made in Japan, and it was a beauty, with port fuel injection, both a timing belt and chain, oil-to-water cooling, and oil reserves in the valve train to reduce wear during starting. Once slated to make close to 300 horsepower, rumors persist that GM management had forced detuning, rejecting the idea of a Lumina with more power than a V8 Camaro. As it was, with chin spoiler side skirts, a deck-mounted rear wing, 16-inch wheels, and Goodyear Eagle tires, the Lumina Z34 mustered 200 horsepower and 215 foot-pounds of torque, 60 horses more than the standard V6 car. At a cruise, it was fairly quiet, but a beautiful roar accompanied dives into the higher end of the rev range. With a voracious appetite for such behavior and a bespoke 5-speed GetDrag manual, it would hit 60 miles an hour from rest in 8.1 seconds and could run the quarter mile in 16. In typical fashion, however, Chevrolet failed to upgrade the brakes. Lumina Z34 sorely lacked ABS, taking 138 feet to stop from 60 miles an hour. Pontiac's Grand Prix STE had ABS. Why not Chevrolet? As good as it was, the Lumina Z34 was simply too much car for the Chevrolet of this era to complete and sell effectively. Which was odd, since Jim Perkins, a Corvette fanatic, was leading the division. But though he loved Corvette, and though he was personally responsible for the program that turned the Caprice into the Impala SS, which is much revered today, Perkins had bought into the idea that Chevrolet should represent value. "That's where our roots are," he told the media, and there was no room for excellence in that formula.
No matter what you're driving now, we think you'll be impressed with Lumina value, quality, and style. It's a car with the safety you need, features you want, and the ownership experience you deserve at a price you can afford. That's what genuine Chevrolet is all about.
Lumina offered an enthusiast suspension package dubbed Euro, which did much for the handling but also resulted in a crashy ride, and steering was still not up to par. Sure, torque steer was surprisingly mild and the ratio was quick, but the wheel felt artificially stiff without enough power assist at low speeds, and simply imprecise. Though the Lumina was a competent car, it was also a late entry that did not bring enough new features to the table, and as a result became part of a fiasco that saw the W-body lose more money than any platform in GM's history. Taurus outsold Lumina by more than 60% in 1993. Despite this, heads did not roll. Cardy Davis, brought to the W-body program from Corvette to restore profitability, once observed, quote, "Most of the key people who were there at the beginning have been transferred. The top people have almost certainly been promoted. So if there's anything wrong, and there always is, both the old guys and the new guys have a common interest in not making waves." It was Davis who shepherded in the second-generation car, which appeared in the fall of '94. The new Lumina used largely the same hardware, but updated the styling, engine, and transmission, and fixed the interior.
If you could find a way to listen to what people really want and design a car around that, if you could give them the room and comfort they want and the safety features they need, and build it to quality standards that we've never met before, you'd have a pretty good car. But if you could do all that starting at $16,000, you'd have a genuine Chevrolet. Introducing the all-new 1995 Chevy Lumina.
Radio and ventilation controls were angled toward the driver, and plastics took on a low-gloss look in place of the old car's oilier, shinier appearance. USA Today called the new 95 Lumina the best Chevy in years. Driver and front passenger airbags were standard, and up-level models got standard ABS too. This, and an advertising pitch focused on affordability and dependability, was part of Jim Perkins' move to refocus the division's character and image. Roomier than Accord and Camry, Lumina felt solid and comfortable, if softer. It was softer, and on standard suspension, more wallowy than Taurus, too. And with the riot of elliptical forms that erupted from Taurus for '96, Lumina was by far the more conservative design. Wrote Michelle Krebs, testing both cars, "I had the recurring sense that the Taurus is a more youthful automobile, or at least one that will prove more satisfying to younger buyers with an affinity for driving." Anonymous, if pleasantly so, Chevy's midsizer lived out its days until the end of the decade, by which point sales had dropped off dramatically, and Lumina was discontinued in favor of the Impala. In a decade, GM had built roughly 2 million Luminas. Though more than 1 million second-generation Luminas were built, the coupes did not count among them. Cardy Davis's Corvette roots had prompted him to resurrect the Monte Carlo name for the second-generation Lumina's two-door model. We are intentionally bringing back some old names because we have found in consumer research clinics that some of the old Chevy names revive the image of what Chevy used to be, said Jim Perkins. The 95 Monte Carlo Z34 used the familiar 3.4-liter dual overhead cam V6, now with 210 horsepower and 215 foot-pounds of torque, up 50 over the 3.1-liter Monte Carlo LS. It hit 60 miles an hour from rest in 8.7 seconds and would crack the quarter mile in 16.5. There was a new tri-link suspension at the rear, tuned more for comfort than the old cars had been, and indeed spirited driving elicited more roll. There were rear drum brakes too, although standard ABS made for a much improved 119-foot stop from 60 miles an hour. All things considered, this was a more relaxed car than the Lumina Coupe had been, and so when for 1998 the comparatively frenzied dual overhead cam motor was ditched for a pushrod 3800 Series 2, the quietly elegant Monte Carlo rounded out the decade as perhaps the most relaxed Lumina ever, more comfortable and more comfortable with itself.
And if you like, tell them that Jim Perkins, the general manager of Chevrolet, and a guy who had a lot to do with this car, sent you by.